So I am in music. So do you know who's singing? No, because you're very young. Bobby Darin died very young. Anyway, so I'm always distracted by music. So that's a bad
Cool.
thing. But so the first group that I formed when I got here was Rhode Island Feminist Chorus.
Okay.
And we started to come up with singing again just last year or 2 years ago. We wrote a grant to get a director, but we didn't get it. But it was to Rhode Island Women's Fund, and they were so wonderful in feeding back to me, because my natural instinct is not a good instinct. It's usually like, why? And Kerry was wonderful, Kelly rather, because we had a good Zoom talk about, it's COVID, and they're very limited funding wise. And anyway, it was a great talk about how limited they are and where money needs to go. But I fully believe, as raised as a musician, that what I saw in organizing in 1978 was that instead of speaking one's message, singing one's message, especially one that you didn't want to hear, singing it was the way to go. And so for me, organizing through music has always done it. And we sang for 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and we made a CD. And I would really like to bring back the Rhode Island Raging Grannies now.
What's that?
That is a group that comes out of Canada. The Raging Grannies comes out of Canada. The Rhode Island Raging Grannies obviously would be our branch.
Mm-hmm.
We started in the probably 90s, and it's a small group. It's very simple in that you take songs that are known and you just change the words based on what issue we were talking about. And now with Black Lives Matter and young people leading, it would be so great to have older people, especially women, there to do the protesting in song. The problem, of course, is that singing right now is the worst manner of expression because of COVID, and speaking loudly and spitting,
Yeah.
loud talk. So, but I do pledge as soon as we're able that the Rhode Island Raging Grannies will be my next move. But I've formed many different musical groups. The last one that I did form was called Grace Note Singers, and that's a group that sings people over. So we sing people as they transition on their journey passing. And that group is still going.
Cool.
Yeah,
Very nice.
so that's a good one. But the other groups that I started very early was Take Back the Night.
Okay.
So hopefully you've heard of Take Back the Night. No? Okay. So Take Back the Night is an international movement, and I was given the name of that by Joanne Rongo, who is somebody that I would love for you to interview.
Okay.
She's one of my idols. My mother is my ultimate idol, but Joanne Rongo, as far as a movement is concerned, is an activist in Rhode Island. I don't know how she would identify. I won't identify for her publicly. But she was so active in Women's Liberation Union that I formed, after they dissolved the Women's Liberation Union, Ruthie and I still keep the incorporation papers alive. But I formed Feminist Resources Unlimited to continue that movement. I know I started talking about, I'll finish about Take Back the Night. So Joanne told me about Take Back the Night, which is an international movement about speaking out against violence against women in the street, in the workplace, and at home. And we marched in the street for 28 years.
Wow.
And now the reason we stopped is because people stopped coming because people started doing it on campuses. But we would march through the streets of downtown for 28 years. Yeah, it was absolutely fabulous. Really, really wonderful. And at the first one, my car was towed by the police, and it really set me up for all of the work that I do with law enforcement. Because of the work I do with law enforcement is organizing trainings around hate crime. And I've come a long way with that, with a beautiful dog.
Oh, yeah.
as far as picketing police, now what I do is set up trainings with police. So,
Cool.
yeah. I wish more people knew about Take Back the Night, so I'm glad you now know about Take Back the Night. But they're done all over the country, the marches. And should I stop?
Yeah, no, it's good. I just wanted to make sure it keeps going.
Yeah. The other thing I started then in 1992 was the Rhode Island Clothesline Project. Have you heard of the Clothesline Project?
No.
So that is a project that was started in 1990 on the Cape, and it's literally T-shirts started by a group of artists, women artists, when they saw that the amount of people who were killed, soldiers in Vietnam, were less than the amount of casualties from domestic violence. And so there was a series of color coding based on verbal abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, rape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We only got white T-shirts because that's what we got donated, but I will send you pictures of this. It's amazing.
Please.
I have been blessed enough to have some papers at the Brown Library, and I have most of that at the Brown Library, at the Hay Library. But the Clothesline Project is unreal. Stephen Pennell did an unbelievable exhibit of the Clothesline Project at URI. But we would have the display up in libraries, in schools. We just had it last year at Moses Brown, and it speaks to victimization. There has not been one time I've had it up on display where someone doesn't come out about having been assaulted. It is, I never understood in the very beginning, how can a T-shirt, how can that tell a story? And it is unreal to me. Of all the projects I've done with every music thing, my mother was a musician, and every single thing she said to me, that is your best project ever. It's unreal. It just hangs on a clothesline, and it's literally airing your dirty laundry. It's only for women, and it's intense. It's really beautiful. And then the other thing, the major thing that I did was Feminist Resources Unlimited, which was networking all the feminist groups in the state. So at that point it was like NOW and all the groups that you see now, most of which have fallen away. Women's Political Caucus, which have now changed. And I'm pointing because it's day one now, and they're right over here.
Okay.
And it would have been the Women's Fund, which is right over there, but nobody had offices. So I had a little house on Broad Street, and it was the upstairs of Elmwood Neighborhood Housing Project.
Okay.
And we called it the FRU House, Feminist Resources Unlimited. And one of the rooms was an office space for Barbara Margolis, who, you know who Barbara is. You've got to interview Barbara Margolis.
Okay.
She's a lesbian feminist lawyer. She's retired now from the court system.
What's her last name?
Margolis, Margolis. She was the chair at Youth Pride for a while. And she shared that office with this woman who's passed way too early. Her name was Dot Lohman. She's who I was naming the building after when we get it, the LGBTQ.
Cool.
Yeah, that's why it was called Dorothy's Place. Well, that and Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's Place, but it was for Dot Lohman. But anyway, so we had this space, and one room was for Dot and Barbara. Another room was for Rape Crisis Center. This is well before this is when they were a radical lesbian Rape Crisis Center. They had 4 staff people. Now it's day one. And the basement was for a group called Brother to Brother, which Michael, who I was telling you about, who was my friend Michael, started. And that was the first group where men were court mandated because of abuse. So they were court mandated to group. which was amazing. Now it's called psychology. You know, they have to go for groups and people get reimbursed and all that bullshit. Excuse me, but that's what it is, in my view. Anyway, and then we had one room where all those groups, like now, and all those people who didn't have offices could use free of charge for their monthly meetings. So that was the Frew House. In the back of the house was a little garage, and Mary Riley, Sister Mary Riley, who started Dorcas Place and Sophia Academy, came to me one day. She's a Sister of Mercy. I'm Jewish, and I used to call my parents and say, you know, it took these Sisters of Mercy to teach this Jewish kid what it's like to organize. She said to me, darling, what are you doing with that garage? I said, nothing, and she started Dorcas Place in the back of that house.
Wow.
So she went on and started Dorcas Place, which is now International Dorcas Place, and she's also started the Sophia Academy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's feminist research. We started a newspaper. We had a third wave, so it was a lesbian feminist newspaper, which was amazing. 10,000 copies a month. Then we went to a quarter, and yeah. So we did a lot.
Yeah. Super a lot. Can you talk about what it means to be a feminist?
Yes. Actually, that's more difficult to come out than it is to be a lesbian, it seems.
Yeah.
It seems like people have ignored feminism, which is more painful to me.
I think people don't understand it.
I think they don't. Yeah, well, for me, I think, unfortunately, it's different for everybody. Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm very, very much into language. I actually wrote or was instrumental in writing 2 pieces of legislation. I'm not a legislator, so I work with the legislators to write language. The first piece was with Liz Moranci, who was a former Sister of Mercy, and it was the bill was that legislation could no longer be written in gendered language. It has to be written in gender neutral language. At this point, yeah, I wouldn't be so supportive of that because of trans issues. But so you're asking about feminism. When we ran Feminist Resources Unlimited, we said that the groups had to be pro-choice, have 4 issues that they were to call themselves feminists. Be pro-choice, be pro-LGBTQ issues, be anti-war, and anti-nuclear, and anti-violence against women. Had to do all the work that they could for those 4 issues. That's what I would still say is, so you must be pro-choice, period. Must be LGBT, and all of them full stop. I would still say those. So we had, like, for example, in the chorus, there was a song that we had, and in it was about choice. And we had a member that wanted to sit out. And that was, there's no discussion about that. So it's not that we're trying to brainwash. It's a culture. The other bill that I take most pride in, because I do think that it's problematic around the language around trans issues, is the hate crime language. So the work that I do now is, and have since 1988. 1988, I went to 2 legislators and said, could we change the categories in the Hate Crime Monitoring Act? At that point, there were only 3 categories that were considered in the Hate Crime Monitoring Act, and it was race, religion, and ethnic origin. I wanted to add gender, sexual orientation, and disability. Those categories are not in there. And I particularly wanted gender because of domestic violence and rape. Those crimes were not being considered hate crime. And I have deep, deep, deep belief that if those crimes were considered hate crime, we would not be living in a rape culture. We would see crimes against women, and I believe that's feminist. I feel that people feel that's extreme, but I don't mind being extreme. I don't expect anybody else to, I know Ruthie feels that way, but I don't ask others to claim that as their feminism. So I'm trying to get back to your question about feminism. But those 4 tenets are what I would say about feminism. So back to the language. It took 5 years, and finally that passed.
Wow.
So since 1993, we've been training law enforcement to categorize, to when you see those crimes, number 1, name it a crime, number 2, name it a hate crime, and number 3, report it. Have those numbers gone up? Absolutely not.
Cool.
Well, no, it's actually not, because they're not reporting that.
Still not reporting?
Exactly. But it's not just law enforcement that's not reporting. It's, do we still see rape and domestic violence as hate crime against women? No. In 2007, we changed the language. This is in the Monitoring Act. This is not in this is not in the Advanced Act. This is in the Monitoring Act. We changed the language to include gender ID and expression. So that's a positive thing. But the reporting is still not phenomenal. And we're still training. I think our training is a good training.
Yeah. Can you talk about that, your involvement with training police?
Yep. So we train with the AG's office. We have a wonderful trainer. I recommend him to anyone. I always tease him because he's a straight white guy, and he's fabulous. Keith Hoffman, his name is. He's a civil rights advocate for the state. I think if anybody has an issue, if they don't want to go to police, that they could feel safe going to Keith. I'm happy to share his number anytime. We actually have a phone number now at the Commission on Prejudice and Bias. So, and that's new, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so my role is to set up our trainings. But we do a good training. We teach people how, like I say, to recognize when a crime is, when something is an incident, when something is a crime, when something is a hate crime, and then what to do about it. Mm-hmm. Now do it. So we can't change who people are. In this age when we are so concerned about race division, it's important that we keep training and improve our trainings. So we need more and more. Keith wants to do more and more trainings. He's a white, like I said, he's a white guy. Part of our trainings is to get community speakers in. Our community speakers are not white. We want to listen. All I've done is talk, but that's what I'm here for.
What group is that?
It's Rhode Island Commission on Prejudice and Bias, and it's a governor's commission.
And that's a pretty big group, right? How many?
We have 17 members by law. It's a very poorly, we have hardly any money whatsoever. So, like, the summer will go unpaid.
But it's important.
It's only, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's only me. It's very, very part-time. And we have one person out of the goodness of his heart doing social media. And he's like a semi-commission member. And that's the way it's been. So hopefully we'll get our grant from the state this year, which is very small. And we hope to get VOCA money, but we don't know because they've been cut drastically. And that's it. Jen Stevens is on our commission, which is wonderful.
Love her.
Oh, love Jen.
We went to college together.
Get out!
Yeah, so I've known her a while now.
That baby is due, that second baby, they're having a second baby
Due like 3 days ago.
on the 22nd.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to induce like this week if
Oh, wow.
if Sarah's not. Yeah. She's fabulous. She's our secretary, and anytime I
Okay.
have another thought or doubt, I just Jen, and she's like, don't worry or
Yeah.
whatever.
She's
So
an old soul.
she is an old soul and always has been. She's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. I really wanted to come to the lunch when she did the lunch, because I never make her a perfect little show. I made one. I only made one, but
Yeah. I need to learn how to do those watch parties so we can do a sage
Oh,
watch party. for
that
her.
would be great.
Yeah, I think it would be cool.
That would be a lot of fun.
I keep putting it out to the universe that somebody needs to teach me how to do that, and I'm hoping.
Now, who did I? Yeah, I'm doing a criminal justice reform class with Nondas Vol for a lifelong learning class, and there's a whole group of seniors. Don't identify as gay, but they're really nice, and they know how to do everything Zoom.
Cool.
So I'll see if somebody wants to volunteer to help you.
Yeah, that would be great.
It wouldn't be me. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But
I know how to do all the Zoom stuff, just not how to put the watch party.
okay, a watch party.
Yeah, because a lot of people, what they're doing is they're doing a watch party through Zoom on Facebook.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Instead of sending
Right.
people to Facebook.
Ray doesn't know how to do that?
I don't know if I've asked him.
Ask Ray.
Yeah. I think he usually has a random kid take care of it.
Oh.
But yeah, so I think a lot more people feel comfortable going to Zoom rather than Facebook.
And I know all hell is broken loose over there. So Ray and I had worked a long time together on the building.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I started working with Sage. It had to be around, I'll tell you, it was around 2011, because my mom died 11/3/11. My dad 11/6/12, a year and 3 days apart.
Wow.
And yeah, so election day is the day my mom passed. So I know she's sending all kinds of juju she's working on. But my dad passed the day of Obama's last election. And I was rushing to get to him. He was fine that day, but he was agitated. And I had a meeting with Sage at noon. I was getting off the train. He was in Jersey. And he said, your phone's all set up. I said, okay. I got there, and I had a meeting with Sage. And that was the night he passed, that night. But I said, Daddy, turn the news off. It's making you crazy. And he said, I got to see him get in. I can't go without, knowing I'm getting off task. But he passed like 10 minutes before Obama got in, but he knew he was going to win. So they're sending all this kind of stuff for us. I just know they are.
Yes. Goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I was working, that was the point. I was working with Sage still around then, but right after that, and I was working with this wonderful woman that they set me up with. I think it was Melinda. She was fabulous. And we worked through Roger Williams University with a little class there. Did all this research. And then I had hard times with Sage because they didn't want to go further. And it broke my heart. And Ray and I started to work together, and I bought, 500 pens with Options Rhode Island on it and a website to go fill out this survey that we put in Options about, it was like a focus group in Options. Do you want to live in, I can't tell you how much legwork we did. And I said to Ray, you're a freaking realtor. Go through, he put up with a lot. Go through every building. I'll go through, get the paperwork, and I'll go through every building with you that the city owns. And I will go to, that's another memory I have of was 2016. It was right after Orlando. It was 4 days after Orlando, and we were standing under the bleachers because I was still on the board of Pride. And I was standing there with David Cicilline, who I love, and Lorza.
Love the haircut.
And
I love the haircut.
this is my hairdresser.
Ah,
You're not
hi.
supposed to touch me.
Sorry. I didn't tell you I didn't touch you today.
She cut my hair this morning.
Oh.
So, and we were standing on the bleachers, and I said to them, you know, the two of you have the power right here to find us a building. You have Pride on the second floor. I can't walk up the second floor. I can walk up the second floor. But, you know, my whole thing is that you talk for people who can't talk. You know, look at the problems you're having getting to people who you can't get to. So, but I was doing all that with Ray.
Yes.
And Kim Stoll. Kim Stoll is somebody you should interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think next week. I will.
Oh, good.
I'm in touch with her. We just
Good.
haven't set up a time.
Good. She's fabulous.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did all that with Ray. And we did the survey. And I couldn't get enough support. Everybody said to me, Jodi, build it. We really need it. Build it. Well, I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
But then I worked with Barbara Sokoloff. Barbara Sokoloff is a straight white woman who was better than, she gave me 2 years of free time and is still working with me over at Aldersgate, where I'm on the on the board. The name of their newsletter is The Bridge. And she is a developer, and not a developer, she's a builder. Builder. She's a community consultant.
Okay.
And she's been working with me to try to figure out how we're going to do this. And the grant that we wrote was to have a focus group and really have a good focus group only on that, and to get people from Coventry, from all over the place, one focus group. And, you know, we didn't get it. It wasn't for a lot of money. And we really should have done it because I think she would have done a great job. And it would have been Zoom. But we can do it again.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do it with you. I think that if we write it collaboratively, we'd get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's just a funny time to try to do a focus group right now.
Yeah.
And we're learning from that.
Right, right. But you know, I have to say, I don't know if this should be taped.
Do you want, I can stop it for a
If
minute.
you don't mind.